We never stood a chance, gasped Thomas Brackett, sole survivor of the 1871 Salt Creek Prairie Massacre, where 100 Kiowa and Comanche warriors, led by Satanta in a feathered headdress, clutching a lance in his left hand, stormed on swift ponies, leaving 7 teamsters scalped, arrow-pierced, 1 charred on a wagon wheel. This bloodbath crushed President Grant's dream of native assimilation, as historian S.C. Gwynn wrote. It shattered the myth of American dominion over Comancheria. Quanah Parker, his face streaked with black war paint, bow in hand, led the Quahadi in defiance. How did 300 Quahadi outsmart 600 U.S. soldiers across a 40-mile frozen chase to shield their sacred plains? Watch to uncover their valiant fight. On May 18, 1871, a wagon train led by Henry Warren rumbled across Salt Creek Prairie, carrying supplies to Texas forts. Without warning, over 100 Kiowa and Comanche warriors, their faces painted for war, swept in on horseback, led by Chief Satanta, his feathered headdress swaying as he gripped a lance. In minutes, they overwhelmed the 12 teamsters, killing 7. 5 were scalped, their bodies pierced by dozens of arrows, and 1 was tied to a wagon wheel, doused with oil, and burned alive, his charred remains a grim testament to the attack's ferocity. Only 5 men, including Thomas Brackett, escaped while the warriors looted supplies. Brackett later recounted to Fort Richardson soldiers, "We never stood a chance," his words echoing the terror of an assault that lasted mere moments but left a lasting scar. Historian S.C. Gwynn notes this massacre as a pivotal moment, exposing the fragility of American control over the frontier and igniting calls for retribution. The attack was not random, but a calculated response to broken promises and encroachment on native lands, revealing the deep mistrust fueling the conflict. President Ulysses S. Grant's peace policy, launched in 1869, sought to save native tribes from extinction by assimilating them into Christian agrarian society. He told his cabinet, "These people can be saved only by bringing them into our culture," believing this would protect them from white settlers' greed. Yet, the Salt Creek Massacre of 1871 proved its catastrophic failure. The policy assumed native tribes, particularly the Quahadi Comanche, would abandon their nomadic traditions for reservation life, a notion historian D. Brown critiques as naively optimistic, ignoring centuries of cultural identity. By 1871, 2 years of escalating Comanche raids had shown the policy's limits, with over 200 settler deaths reported across Texas from 1869 to 1871. The massacre, leaving 7 mutilated bodies, became a stark symbol of this collapse, forcing Washington to confront the reality that peace without mutual consent was a delusion. The Comanches' refusal to negotiate reflected not savagery but a fierce defense of their sovereignty, a perspective often overlooked in contemporary accounts. The completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869 united America's coasts, a marvel of engineering celebrated across the nation. Yet, it bypassed Comancheria, a vast 100,000 square mile expanse of southern plains stretching from Texas to Kansas, where the Comanche held sway. This region remained a deadly enigma, its treeless prairies and scorching summers defying American expansion. Military reports from 1870 note that at least 15 wagon trains vanished in Comancheria, their fates unknown, swallowed by the land's harshness and Comanche resistance. General Randolph Marcy, after exploring the region in 1849, called it an illimitable prairie desert, where temperatures soared past 100 Fahrenheit and water sources were scarce. The Comanche, with their intimate knowledge of every hidden spring and buffalo trail, turned this unforgiving terrain into a fortress. Their ability to strike and vanish, as historian T.R. Fehrenbach observes, made Comancheria a no-man's land for outsiders, underscoring why the U.S. Army struggled to assert control and why settlers feared venturing beyond fortified posts. Comanche raids by 1871 had turned the Texas frontier into a wasteland of fear, with over 300 homesteads abandoned in 2 years, leaving ghost towns across a 200-mile stretch from Fort Worth to the Rio Grande. Families huddled in fortified settlements, haunted by tales of Comanche brutality. A Texas ranger, scarred from a near-fatal encounter, described their tactics. "They come like the wind, strike like lightning, and disappear before you can gather your wits." Military records from Fort Richardson document 47 raids in 1870 alone, with 82 settlers killed and 30 captured, often women and children. These attacks, often led by the Quahadi band, targeted isolated farms, burning crops and stealing horses, crippling the frontier economy. The terror was not merely physical but psychological, as families stayed awake, dreading the sound of hooves. Yet, from the Comanche perspective, these raids were acts of survival, protecting their hunting grounds from settler encroachment, a desperate bid to preserve a way of life tied to the buffalo and the open plains. The Quahadi Comanche stood apart as the continent's most defiant native group, rejecting all U.S. treaties and reservation life. Unlike other Comanche bands, who signed agreements like the 1867 Medicine Lodge Treaty, the Quahadi, numbering about 2,000, refused any contact with American authorities, shunning trade with settlers. Their independence, as historian Pekka Hämäläinen notes, made them the last free-roaming power on the plains. Operating from the remote Llano Estacado, they maintained a nomadic lifestyle, moving with the buffalo herds across 50,000 square miles. Their refusal to negotiate stemmed from a history of broken promises, such as unfulfilled treaty provisions for food and supplies. Lieutenant Robert Carter, in his 1871 journal, called them the most wild and hostile tribe, a view tinged with grudging respect for their ability to evade capture. This defiance was not mere rebellion but a cultural stand, rooted in a deep connection to their land and traditions, which American policies sought to erase. Quanah Parker, the Quahadi's war chief, embodied the clash of worlds. Born around 1845 to Cynthia Ann Parker, a white woman captured in 1836 and raised as Comanche, and Peta Nocona, a revered chief, Quanah stood 6 feet tall, his face painted with black war stripes, a bow slung across his back. His mixed heritage made him a symbol of resistance, blending Comanche ferocity with a keen understanding of American tactics. Leading 300 warriors, he orchestrated raids with chilling precision. As Lieutenant Robert Carter noted, his leadership makes the Quahadi untouchable. By 1871, Quanah had led at least 20 documented raids, killing 60 settlers and stealing 400 horses, PER military reports. His mother's assimilation into Comanche culture, marrying Peta Nocona and raising her children as tribal members, shaped Quanah's resolve to defend their way of life. Historian William Hagan calls him a warrior statesman, whose defiance was not just martial but a cultural rebuke to American expansionism. Quahadi warriors wielded short bows with devastating skill, firing 20 arrows per minute at 60 yards, a rate unmatched by the U.S. Army's single-shot Springfield rifles, which took 10 seconds to reload. Each warrior rode with 2 to 3 fresh ponies, enabling them to cover 50 miles a day, outpacing cavalry horses that tired after 20 miles in the plains heat. Military records from 1870 note that Comanche archers killed 35 soldiers in a single ambush near Fort Concho, their arrows piercing with surgical accuracy. This technological edge, combined with their knowledge of Comancheria's terrain, made them nearly invincible in open combat. Historian Thomas Cavanaugh argues, the Comanches' mobility and archery turned the plains into their battlefield, where U.S. tactics faltered. Their strategy of hit-and-run raids, avoiding direct confrontation, preserved their numbers estimated at 1,500 warriors in 1871 while exhausting their enemies, a testament to their adaptive warfare rooted in centuries of nomadic tradition. General William T. Sherman, a moderate voice until 1871, was shaken by the Salt Creek Massacre's brutality, which spared only 5 of 12 Teamsters. On the 1st of September, 1871, he issued a stark order to Colonel Ranald S. McKenzie, commanding the 4th Cavalry. We must enter the wolf's den and force the Quahadi onto reservations or exterminate them. This directive, recorded in military dispatches, marked a shift from defense to offense, authorizing a winter campaign into Comancheria, a first in U.S. military history. Sherman's fury stemmed from the massacre's timing, as he had passed through the same area hours earlier with 20 soldiers, narrowly escaping attack. Historian Robert Utley notes, Sherman's order reflected a growing consensus that peace policies had failed against tribes who rejected subjugation. The Quahadi's refusal to negotiate, coupled with their 47 raids in 1870, pushed the U.S. to abandon diplomacy, setting the stage for a brutal showdown in the heart of the plains. The Llano Estacado, known as the Staked Plains, spanned 37,000 square miles, a treeless expanse where summer heat exceeded 100 degrees Fahrenheit and winter northern storms dropped temperatures by 50 degrees Fahrenheit in an hour. General Randolph Marcy, in his 1849 expedition report, called it the Great Sahara of North America, noting its lack of water and relentless winds that felt like an open furnace. The region's featureless terrain disoriented soldiers, with 12 U.S. close lace, end of seas. Scouting parties lost between 1868 and 1870, per military logs. The Comanche thrived here, knowing every hidden spring and buffalo trail, moving their 3,000-horse herds with ease. Their villages, housing up to 1,000 people, could relocate in hours, as historian Pekka Hamalainen observes. The plains were their ally, a fortress no army could conquer. This environment, hostile to outsiders, amplified the Quahadi's ability to evade and outmaneuver the U.S. Army, making the 1871 campaign a daunting gamble. On the 9th of October, 1871, McKenzie's expedition of 600 soldiers, including 20 Tonkawa scouts, camped near Blanco Canyon, unaware they were watched by Quahadi warriors. At midnight, a single war cry shattered the silence, followed by gunfire and the clanging of bells. Over 100 Comanche, shaking dried buffalo hides, stormed the camp, stampeding 70 horses and mules into the darkness. The attack, lasting 15 minutes, avoided direct combat, targeting the Army's mobility instead. Lieutenant Robert Carter, in his journal, admitted, "We grew complacent, leaving campfires blazing and horses unguarded." The loss of 1/8 of their mounts crippled the expedition, as historian T.R. Wanaventili Vos quote. Fehrenbach notes, "The Comanche's raid was a masterstroke of asymmetric warfare. This tactic, rooted in plains tradition, aimed to strand the cavalry in hostile terrain where thirst and distance could kill as surely as arrows." Lieutenant Robert Carter, a 28-year-old officer with the 4th Cavalry, volunteered to lead a small unit to recover the stolen horses on the 10th of October, 1871. Following Tonkawa scouts, his 12-man party, including Captain Edward Hale, tracked hoofprints for 2 miles into Blanco Canyon. They spotted 6 Quahadi warriors herding 20 stolen horses, but the warriors fled, luring them deeper. Suddenly, 300 Quahadi, led by Quanah Parker in black war paint, his bow raised, emerged on the ridges, their war bonnets signaling veteran fighters. Carter's men were trapped in a narrow arroyo, with no cover. He ordered a defensive line, firing Spencer carbines to hold back the onslaught. Historian William Hagan calls this a textbook Comanche ambush, exploiting the Army's eagerness to chase. The trap revealed the Quahadi's mastery of deception, using the terrain to turn a small pursuit into a near massacre. During the Blanco Canyon ambush, Captain Edward Hale, a 35-year-old officer with new recruits, panicked as 300 Quahadi warriors closed in. Ignoring Carter's orders, Hale wheeled his horse and fled with 6 men, leaving Carter and 5 veterans to face the onslaught. The Quahadi, chanting war cries, charged in lightning dashes, their arrows whistling past. Carter's men used their horses as shields, firing 70 rounds from their Spencer carbines to slow the attack. Women's voices from the ridges, urging the warriors on, signaled a nearby village. Carter later wrote, "Hale's flight was a grave error, exposing our flank." Historian Robert Utley notes, "Such cowardice was rare but devastating in plains warfare." The incident underscored the Army's disarray against the Quahadi's coordinated assault, a stark contrast to their disciplined resistance to protect their families. Quanah Parker, riding a swift pony, his face a mask of black paint, targeted Private Kander Gregg, a 22-year-old cavalryman whose horse faltered during the retreat. As Gregg shouted, "Lieutenant, my horse is giving out." Quanah closed to 10 yards, raised a stolen pistol, and shot him through the head. Gregg's body slumped to the dust, a moment Carter called the second tragedy of Blanco Canyon. The Quahadi did not pause to take scalps, a rare choice suggesting urgency to protect their village. Carter, firing his last rounds, led his 4 surviving men in a desperate gallop to escape. Historian S.C. Gwynn writes, "Gregg's death was a personal blow, revealing the human cost of a campaign outmatched by Comanche skill. This loss highlighted the Quahadi's lethal precision and the emotional toll on soldiers facing an enemy they could barely see. McKenzie's force, alerted by gunfire, reached the abandoned Quahadi village on the 11th of October, 1871, finding teepee poles, buffalo hides, and tools scattered across a site that housed 1,000 people and 3,000 horses. The village's rapid evacuation, covering 5 miles an hour, stunned the 600 soldiers. Tonkawa scouts traced crisscrossing trails, a deliberate ploy to confuse pursuit, with tracks doubling back across a 10-mile radius. Carter noted, "Their retreat was a marvel of organization, sacrificing goods for speed." Historian Pekka Hemalainen explains, "The Comanches' mobility was their greatest weapon, turning villages into ghosts overnight. The discovery, though a tactical gain, frustrated the army, as the Quahadi's cunning ensured their families escaped, preserving their resistance against overwhelming odds. A sudden northern storm struck on the 12th of October, 1871, as McKenzie's force closed within 2 miles of the fleeing Quahadi village. Winds of 50 miles per hour and freezing sleet lashed the 600 soldiers, who lacked winter gear. Temperatures plummeted from 70°F to 20°F in an hour, soaking summer uniforms and bruising skin with hail. McKenzie, despite Carter's urging, halted the pursuit, fearing exhaustion and hypothermia after a 40-mile chase. Carter called this the final tragedy, as the storm shielded the Quahadi's escape. Historian T.R. Fehrenbach notes, "The Norther was the Comanche's ally, turning nature against the army. The decision, though prudent, cost the expedition its prize, highlighting the Quahadi's ability to exploit both terrain and weather in their desperate bid to remain free." The Blanco Canyon Campaign ended in retreat, with McKenzie's 600 soldiers returning to Fort Richardson on the 15th of October, 1871, their mission unfulfilled. The Quahadi, led by Quanah Parker, had outmaneuvered them across 40 miles of unforgiving plains, using cunning raids and a timely storm to protect their 1,000-person village. Yet, this clash marked a turning point, as historian S.C. Gwynn observes. It signaled the end of Comanche invincibility, proving their lands could be invaded. By 1875, relentless U.S. campaigns would destroy 3,000 Quahadi horses and winter camps, forcing Quanah and his people onto reservations, ending a 200-year era of free-roaming life. Their resistance, rooted in a sacred bond with the buffalo and plains, was not savagery but a fight for survival, a legacy of courage that demands our respect. As we recount their story, we face a profound question. How can we preserve the memory of 2,000 Quahadi who defied 600 soldiers to protect their way of life, while confronting the scars of a conquest that silenced their voices?